All right, welcome back everyone to the Lake Travis Progressives Candidate Forum. We had a really nice conversation with the Lakeway mayoral candidates, and now I'm really excited to hear from our Lake Travis ISD school board candidates. I'm going to give them each 1 minute to do a brief introduction, and then we're going to get into a lot of the questions. I just want to say I appreciate how many of you sent in questions to us. We will be forwarding along any questions we're not able to get to today to the candidates so that they can respond to you. But thank you again for all your participation. So we're going to do this by last names. So first up and for her introduction is Cara Bell. And Cara Bell is here via phone, so she will not have a video. So I'm going to start with you, Cara. You have 1 minute. And if you can see Susanna, please pay attention to the timer. If not, I'll just let you know verbally. Go ahead, Cara, and introduce yourself. Doesn't look like Kara's with us. Okay, we'll go on to Philip Davis, and we can come back to her. Go ahead, Philip.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to the Lake Travis Progressives, the Lake Travis Democrats, and the Tuscan Village voters for hosting the forum tonight. I'm excited about this opportunity. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My family and I moved here from North Carolina back in 2016. We have 3 lovely kids who participate and are very active in the Lake Travis ISD. Next year, we will have actually those 3 kids in 3 different campuses, which will be a challenge and exciting time for us. I am an educator at Texas State University, and I hope to bring my experiences as a teacher, researcher to the school board to support the Lake Travis ISD students, faculty, and staff so that they can become the best versions of themselves. And I'm excited about this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll go to Todd Taylor.
My name is Todd Taylor. I was actually born in the state of Texas. My dad was in the military, so I traveled around the world, got to see a lot of different neat things while I was out. Moved back to Texas in 1990, attended the University of Texas in 95. I graduated from there. I actually graded standardized tests for a while after that, which is sort of an interesting thing. You can see how our standardized tests are graded. I graded the writing portion, so you get to see what these students produce and see the different quality that's out there. So that was a very interesting opportunity. Went back to Texas State and got my master's degree. While I was there, I wrote my thesis on public school financing, internship for Kino Flores, and I actually got to present on a panel with Kino and the judge who ruled on the public finance reform in Texas. So that was an interesting thing, an interesting part of life that I got to actually participate with some politicians and some judges that actually had influenced those decisions. And then after that, I went to work at I substituted for a while in Austin ISD and HEB ISD. So I've actually worked for 3 different school districts. I worked for Texas State for 2 years as an instructional coach. And then I worked for ASD as a long-term position. And now I've worked for LTISD for 9 years.
Okay, thank you so much. Lauren, go ahead with your 1 minute intro.
Hi, I'd like to start by thanking our hosts this evening, the Lake Travis Progressives, Lake Travis Democrats, and the Tuscan Village voters for putting this forum together. My name is Lauren White, and I'm running for re-election to the LTISD board, place 2. In college, I double majored in elementary and special education, and I taught for a decade in the public schools of Washington, D.C. and Austin. My husband and I have lived in Austin since 2005, and we moved to the Lake Travis area 8 years ago so that our 3 children could go to elementary school and go to school in Lake Travis ISD. I've had the honor of serving on the Board of Trustees for the last 3 years, and in my time on the board, I'm proud of what we have accomplished, but a lot of important work is yet unfinished. I'm asking for your vote to continue to serve our community and use my experience to help us navigate the challenges ahead.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And I'm going to go back to Cara Bell. Cara is with us by phone. Cara, you are muted. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. You can just give us your 1 minute introduction. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, my name is Cara Bell, and I am running for LTISD School Board Place 2. And I am running for the people, for the students. And with that being said, I am for full transparency, and a bunch of my neighbors wanted me to ask the question because there's a rumor going around that some candidates were given the questions before, which I said I was not and did not know, but I would ask. So if you could answer that at the end, that would be wonderful. And then also, could you address why you excluded the Lakeway City Council candidates? Many wanted to attend tonight, and myself included wanted to hear from our Lakeway City Council candidates and weren't sure why they were excluded. I am running to put students first, and I believe we do that by partnering with parents and supporting teachers and having full transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll go ahead and address that, Kara. You used your time to ask me a question. Number one, we're really busy parents. I have 2 young kids in elementary school. I've been on Zoom since 7 o'clock this morning. And so we had to figure a way to do this over Zoom in the interest of time. And so we chose to include the Bee Cave City Council election, which we haven't been able to do before. And so in the interest of time, we chose 3 races to cover 3 hours on Zoom. And we are really excited to have Bee Cave City Council with us tonight. And nobody got the questions ahead of time. In fact, during my busy day today, I was working on the questions I'm about to ask you right in the middle. So there's no way any of you could have been sent these because I just printed a fresh copy out. So let's go ahead and get started with our questions. So we're going to go ahead and start with Kara. You're going to have the first question in alphabetical order, and then it will go Philip, Todd, and Lauren. The first question for you, Kara, is what is your opinion of the current communication process to the 3 key constituents, teachers, parents, and students? How would you make any changes, if any? And Kara, you're up. You just have to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I think the current communication process that I have seen between the teachers and administration via email is good. I'm getting, updated emails. I've also gotten phone calls from, my kids' teachers, and it's amazing. We didn't have that at our previous school, so I like the accessibility. The communication on some of what's coming up has been a little bit hard this year, and I attribute that to COVID and everything that's been going on and just the hardship that they've had to deal with in navigating some of this on uncharted waters. And so I think the communication process right now is good. I think there could be room for improvement, but overall, I think it's good.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Philip, you're up next.
Okay, thank you for the question. I believe the communication process has worked really well so far between the student and the teacher, as well as the student and the family, the student-teacher family communication. I think that those the teachers do an excellent job of getting out their information and communicating to us in a timely fashion. And I think that should continue. I also have timely communications from the school in terms of the administration and the principal. One area that I would like to see a little more communication on from the district is actually speaking to the constituency of the parents, and that being through the school board, since the school board is elected by the voters and the parents that send their kids to the ISD. I think is one opportunity for us to try to close loops. And that's one of the key tenets of what I'm running for, is to have a little more transparency as it relates to the communications between the parents and the school board, as well as some administrators. I think that we can do that on a continuous basis where it's fully transparent so that parents are always in the know. I attended the strategic planning sessions last week, and there were some parents who just didn't know. Maybe they didn't know where to look, but I think that there is a tremendous opportunity for us to close those gaps and make sure that all of the constituencies are communicated to effectively.
Thank you so much. Todd?
I think the communication has been pretty good. They utilize email, they've utilized text messages. So getting information out to parents, I think, has been a pretty good thing. I think one of the frustrations with teachers is we have too many platforms that they're responsible for. They have Schoology, they have their email, they have multiple things that they're sort of supposed to keep up with. So we sort of need to narrow that down so your teachers aren't being overwhelmed with different forms of communication, but it's sort of left to one resource so that everyone's familiar with where they need to go and where they need to communicate. As far as community impact, I think one of the things that needs to be sort of picked up is, instead of emailing leadership@ltisdschools.org, I think each of the board members should have their own email account, so that if a parent has a concern, they can email one of their representatives directly, instead of emailing a blind account where they don't even know who's answering that email or where it's going. So I think that type of two-way communication needs to improve, especially when it's just to standard community members. And I think that we need to sort of just focus on getting a single platform so that the teachers can be comfortable using one thing instead of trying to invest their time in multiple platforms.
Thank you so much, Todd. And we'll wrap up with Lauren.
Thank you. I think this is a really interesting and timely question, because with COVID, so much of our normal school activities have been kind of stripped away, and what's left is communication. And so we've seen that. I know as a parent, I get lots of emails and phone calls from the teachers keeping me informed, which has been really helpful, especially through this difficult year. I think in general, the communication, I was learning recently, listening to a discussion about how communication with schools in general has really changed from a one-way delivery model to a two-way delivery model. And I think that's something that will continue to evolve. And I think, kind of like Todd said, I think it would be neat to have another way for constituents to kind of communicate with the board. We aren't allowed to respond as individuals on behalf of the board, but I know other districts have some programs in place that I think would definitely be worth looking into, that just make it easier and a little bit more accessible way for community members and parents with concerns to share that information.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you all for answering that question. So this next question is going to start with Philip. Are you in favor of a second high school? If so, when would you like for it to be built?
Okay. The second high school question is one that comes up in some of the committees that I've served on as a volunteer in the school district. And I think it's a very important one to really think through. We have over 11,000 students in our school district, and it's quite daunting for some of our students to actually go to our high school in its current state because there's over 3,000 students there. I do think at some point there will be a need for a second high school. What does that look like? I'm not exactly sure. Could it be a traditional high school and just a Lake Travis 2 high school? Could it be more of an innovative approach to high school where it has specific programs for those who may be interested in attending that high school? I'm not sure, but I do believe that with the forecasted growth that we're anticipating in our district, with the changes in population and demographics, I do believe that we will need to have a second high school. The timing of that, I think, will be critical from the standpoint of looking at those numbers and paying close attention to what our students need are as it relates to them continuing to grow and to develop. One of the things that's important for me for the students is that they need to feel very comfortable going to their high school. And I know that some of the students that we have today are a little taken aback at the size of our high school. And I would like to be able to ensure that going forward, these students and all of our students who will attend high school at some point feel comfortable in the place that they're going to. They have the access to the same quality, high quality education that we currently provide, and that they have access to those great opportunities for them to prepare themselves for their next step, whether that be college or on to trade school or even taking a gap year. But I do think a second high school will be necessary in the very near future.
Thank you so much. Todd?
I actually love this question. I think it's a great time for this district. I think we can go ahead. Probably need to get a bond together for the second high school. The main question of the second high school is, how do you do it? Do you go with a LASA model like they have in AISD, where you sort of have a magnet for your sciences and your art students so that you really can concentrate on that? And those academic schools tend to perform a lot higher. I believe in the US News and World Report, Lake Travis was like ranked around 1,000 nationally. And in the state of Texas, we were, I believe, out of the top 100 even. But if you look at Lawson, you look at those magnet type schools, they really elevate up. And I think that it may have been in the top 10. So it would be wonderful to bring that opportunity to students out here if you do like a magnet approach, or you could go into a full new high school, which then you would split it. And each of those gives you massive abilities to allow students to engage. You would have 2 NHS people, you'd have 2 valedictorians, 2 salutatorians, double the clubs, double everything up so that you're giving students more of an opportunity to engage and things that will stay with them the rest of their lives. These are opportunities that now are restricted to like 1 kid because they're the president of the club. Well, now you have 2 high schools, you have 2 clubs. So yes, you might take a hit and you might have smaller overall athletics, but you would also be giving each student more of an option. More opportunities are available when you have 2 different locations that you're attending. So I think it could be a real boon for this community. And I think it really could make our students feel important and engaged more.
Thank you so much. Lauren?
Thanks. I'm glad I get to answer this totally non-controversial question that I definitely didn't answer 3 years ago. No, just kidding. We did, but it's still a topic. And I don't think anyone can look at the high school and look at the homes being built out here and not recognize a need for more space. And I think one of the most important factors will be the demographic projections that should come in next month. They were delayed because of COVID, but that tells us exactly how many kids our final build out number will be. And we really have no idea at this point. And that will give us an idea of what the options are. Like Todd and Philip mentioned, smaller school, a magnet program that may take 1,000 students. Is that what we need to siphon off, or do we need 2 full-size high schools, or is there another configuration that works? I think the most important thing to keep in mind is that this isn't, we look at the numbers and then we have to look at the financials and see what we can afford. It's very expensive to open new campuses, so you have to time it exactly right for the number of students. And I think beyond that, we have to really have a formal process to get community input so that when we make the decisions, the community is involved and has a voice in shaping what happens, because this will change the future of Lake Travis ISD.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And Kara, just go ahead and unmute. You're up.
Thank you. Yes, I think additional school isn't a matter of should we, but we must. How it's done, I think we need to all take a look at. I think the parents, teachers, and administrators need to look at it. How can we best benefit our students? I liked what Todd Taylor said. We have, over 1,000 students this freshman year. My son was very fortunate to make one of these teams that he tried out for, but there were so many talented students that did not, and it broke my heart. I want the opportunity to develop any student who's interested in something. Is that realistic? I don't know, but I think if we had an additional school of some type, we could give more opportunities for children to be involved in the community. I think looking out 71, all you see is growth. More students are coming. I don't know how 620 during a normal school year will be with more growth. The infrastructure just isn't there in and out of one high school with all the children already there and all the children coming. Financially, I'd be very concerned if this hadn't been already budgeted for, knowing the projected growth. So I'd be concerned if the finances weren't there, especially considering our high taxes. So yes, I think it needs to be looked at. How it's done is going to be interesting, but I came from a school that had a small town with 2 very amazing high schools, rivals at homecoming. It brought in money, it brought in community, and it was amazing. And both schools had amazing programs for academics and extracurriculars, and they were able to do it and give that opportunity to a bigger group of parents, children, students, and the community. And I think we need to look at that.
Thank you, Kara. All right, we're going to go on to our next question. We're going to start this one with Todd. And this one came from a teacher, directly from a teacher. So we asked the community to send us questions, and We got a lot from teachers. So this is a direct question from a teacher and a direct quote. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask it, and then we'll start with you, Todd. As a veteran educator, we are facing an increasing teacher shortage in our country. If you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, teachers were called heroes and parents were singing our praises. Fast forward to August and September, when teachers were no longer heroes, but lazy and selfish for having concerns about going back to the classroom during a pandemic. We sat and watched our community at board meetings and on social media say negative and demeaning comments about our profession. Since then, teachers have worked countless hours and are wiped out. Very few acknowledge or recognize the struggles that this year has unfortunately given us. How would you address teacher morale, and what ideas do you have to make teachers feel like they are valued and appreciated as an integral part of the LT community? We're starting with Todd.
Well, I think the first part, we have to recognize our teachers, and we have to take advantage of things the state has given us, like the teacher incentive allotment. So we could show them that we care by actually doing the work to get them on a rating system that would increase their salaries. So there's some superintendents have sort of balked at this because the state has only funded it for 5 years, but I'm pretty sure that most teachers would be more than happy with a potentially $10,000 increase in their salary for every year for their 5 highs. So we could help pay them more, which always makes people feel better. But I also think there's a large thing about communicating with the public. I think that people don't understand how difficult teaching is, how much of a thankless profession it is. And a lot of times we don't really recognize that. So I think one of the things the board can do is they can be really advocates, and they can listen to teachers, and they can hear their complaints and hear what they want, because the teachers will tell you what they need. They fortunately are a vocal group, so most of them will share with you exactly what they need. And that's when it's up to us to listen and implement what would make them feel better about themselves. Because some of that is going to be coming out to their campus, doing stuff for them, maybe potentially not even having like a convocation this next year when they're back in class, so that they can have that entire day to do planning and prep, valuing their time so that it's not wasted on new classes that they don't need. So in-service days become valuable to them. They have feedback, they have buy-in. They're allowed to sort of dictate which path they want to take, because that empowers them. And then we listen to them, and we allow them to sort of choose where they want to go in this profession and create leadership pathways so they can go up into administration if they'd like to pursue those paths. So I think there's a lot of things we can do, and mainly it's giving them a voice and working with them and knowing that we care. And I know how hard their profession is, and I respect them immensely, and I've worked with them for 15 years. And so anything I can do to help them, I will.
Thank you so much. Lauren?
Thank you. I just want to start by saying thank you to everyone who works in our schools, to everyone who has been there this past incredibly difficult year, the teachers, the staff, food service, bus drivers, custodial staff, administrators, substitutes. I don't want to leave anyone out, but we, as a community, I know so many of us are so grateful for our staff that have gotten us through a really difficult year. And, you know, we have really nice buildings in Lake Travis ISD, but it's the people that work in them that make them special. And I think I like what Todd was saying about making sure that we listen to teachers in terms of giving them time. And I know that the 5 extra professional development days this year were not very popular with a lot of parents, I understand. But that was something that we really heard from the teachers that they needed, especially navigating the challenges of teaching online and in person at the same time. And I think when all of that's behind us, we have to look at continuing to prioritize teacher pay. And I think we know that that's the majority of our budget. And so, you know, there are times we have to cut programs that are not working best for our students, so that we can focus on making sure we're compensating the teachers we have as fairly as possible.
Thank you so much. Kara? Kara, you just muted. There you go. Kara, can you hear us? Kara, I'll come right back to you. Go ahead, Phil.
Sure, thank you. This question really speaks to my heart as an educator, as a teacher. One of the things that I've faced in the classroom this year is some of that, the missing civility that goes along with being an educator, the remarks around being lazy and not caring, and those things are very hurtful. And so I really feel your pain and your passion as a fellow educator when that is said. I think one of the things that we have to do a better job of with our teachers is we have to give them a voice. That voice has to be heard. It has to be actioned when we do hear them. Our teachers are the very first point of contact for our students. If we want our students to excel in the classroom and excel in life, our teachers have to feel that passion and encourage them to push forward. They can't do that if they are tired, if they're feeling not supported. And so we have to create a mechanism that's going to allow them to be taken care of, to be heard, and to be followed up on. I will also say that teacher pay is very, very important. We simply don't pay teachers enough. That's something that I think we should look at closer and try to find ways to work through. The other thing that I believe is very important, in addition to giving them the voice, in addition to giving them increased pay, we have to pay very close attention to their development and identify opportunities for them to say and provide input as to what they want to do next, whether that's administration or some other type of development for them so that they can stay refreshed and energized. Because we have to remember that when that teacher is happy and when that teacher is feeling the love from everyone in the constituency group, they pour that into their children in the classroom. And that translates to our kids coming home happy, coming home educated, and coming home prepared for their next steps.
Thank you so much. Kara, I'm going to come back to you. Kara, if you can hear me, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Try one more time. Try to unmute one more time.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. I think Philip really hit it on the head. I have been talking to many teachers in the community, and they don't feel heard, and that breaks my heart. I'm really crushed that they didn't feel supported, and I understand why. I was on social media, and there was a real divide this year, and I think it really split the community, and it's sad because it hurt our children. And to make our children successful, we need the best teachers, and we need to start paying them what they're worth. Texas is low as far as statewide for what we pay teachers. And according to 2019 statistics, Lake Travis ISD wasn't even paying our teachers the Texas state average. That's concerning to me. Where are we putting our money if it's not in our teachers? We need to support them, we need to pay them, and we need to retain them to give our children the best education. And I think we need to show the support for them. The Texas Education Code 26 says parents are partners with educators and as administrators. That means, teachers, parents, and administrators need to work together in partnership according to the code and do what's right for our children. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to Lauren now, but really quickly before we turn to the next question, we did get a text from Spike McBride, who apologized for not being able to make it. He had a conflict related to his child and he could not move it. And so he just wanted to send his appreciation for all of you being here. And so thank you, Spike, and hopefully you can get your message out. But I just wanted to let everybody know that before we go on. So let's go ahead and get to our next question. And Lauren, this one we're going to start with you. The Centers for Disease Control's Youth Risk Behavior Surveys national data from 2019 stated that 25% of students in grades 6 through 12 have reported being bullied. 19% reported seriously considering a suicide attempt. 16 have made a suicide plan, and 9% have made a suicide attempt. If you are elected, how will you support the creation, implementation, and sustainability of a comprehensive program that builds mental health protective factors for kids in grade kindergarten through 12, and specifically focuses on the implementation of those skills for students in grade 9 through 12?
Thank you. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to answer that question. When I ran for office 3 years ago, I talked a lot about our student to counselor ratio in our schools. And I'm proud that over the last 3 years, we've added a significant number of counselors to our middle schools and our high school. And I'm not saying it's enough. It's something we continue to look at. We've also added our first and second licensed clinical social worker and kind of revamped the entire social emotional learning program so that the goal is for the licensed clinical social workers to be able to handle the crisis, the students in crisis and the families in crisis, because we want our school counselors to be able to focus on doing the kinds of relationship building and prevention work that their role is designed for. So I think that's something that we need to continue to roll out. There is a social emotional learning curriculum that's been adopted by additional grades each year. And I think we have to look post-pandemic at additional staff and support and access to counseling, because we know that if there was a mental health crisis before this pandemic, it's only worse now. And we need to support our students so that everyone in Lake Travis ISD feels welcomed and safe.
Thank you, Lauren. And we will go to Kara next.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I agree that there is a serious decline in our children's mental health. We're seeing it across the board. The studies are grim. We need to focus on what is basically killing our children. They are depressed. They are unengaging. Is it the screen time? What's going on? Not all children are experiencing these effects, thank goodness, but we really need to take a deep dive, and we need to, get uncomfortable if it is and talk about these children, because if our children are depressed, they're not learning to the level that they should. And the bullying situation is very near and dear to my heart. I used to work with Champions Against Bullying, and bullying affects us all. It doesn't just affect the victim, it affects the bystander and the bully, him or herself. And I believe our community is a bystander of bullying. I see it with adults, I see it with parents, I see it in the community. And I know that we are living, post-pandemic, and we have been divided and we have been scared, living in fear and stress, and it's all coming to our head, and our children are the ones that are suffering. We need to really dive in and, hire more counselors. We need to have more programs, and we need to have more programs for people that can engage, whether it be parents after work, during the day. How can we help these children? But we need to put our heads together and work together because it's not going to get any better if we don't stop and acknowledge the serious problem that we have.
Thank you so much, Kara. We'll go to Philip next.
Okay. One of the things that I think is very important when we're thinking about the mental health of our students is, first and foremost, mental health, unfortunately, has a stigma associated with it. And that's something that we have to stop in its tracks. That is a serious issue because people who may suffer, whether it's a student or a family member or even a teacher or an administrator who is suffering from mental illnesses, they may not feel very comfortable being vocal about what is presenting a challenge for them because of that stigma. And so we have to do the work to debunk those stigmas associated with mental health and mental wellness. Second, we do need to continue to hire more counselors for our school district and put them in the critical places that is close to our students. I think this is very important. The district has taken a number of steps in the right direction. I think we should continue down that path, but I would also like to make sure that as an instructor at the university level, we are considered the first line of defense for students and recognizing trends and behaviors. And one of the things that I think is important is that when we are looking to do something about an issue in our district, we can track it, we can conduct trend analysis of what's happening with the issue, and then we can take action. But if we don't track that metric, if we're not paying close attention to what's going on, we have no chance of solving the problem. So I do believe that our teachers probably need some additional training to help them recognize those issues. And we need metrics in place that's going to allow us to see us move the dial and change the dialogue as it relates to mental wellness, not only for our students, but for our faculty and staff as well. I think our district has done a great job so far with the resources that we have, but we need to continue that trend.
Thank you so much. Todd?
You know, one of the worst stories I ever heard when I was involved in teaching was one of the English teachers got a phone call from a kid who was suicidal, and he raced over there and he was too late. And those are the stories that stay with you when you work with educators and people who really invest their lives in this stuff. So we've got to make it where the teachers, one, have open dialogues with students. So we have to make sure that teachers are free to talk to everyone. They don't alienate their students in any way, so that any kid feels comfortable coming and talking to them. So we want to make sure that all the teachers are open to everybody, so that any student, because you never know when you're going to be that teacher that a kid confides in. And then we need to train our teachers actually how to recognize those signs and when you escalate it up. And then, because I think a lot of the students are going to be a lot more willing to speak to that favorite teacher of theirs, their art teacher, if they're an artist, their coach, if they're an athlete, you know, maybe a debate teacher, somebody that they feel comfortable with. And that's why teachers get there so early and students come in early. So we need to let students into the building before school actually starts, so they can see their educators, talk to them, build those relationships with them. And then once those teachers see those signs, if they think it's serious, they can push it up to the more counselors that should be hired for these, especially coming out of COVID. We're going to need this support for our kids. And that way you have a staggered system where that they get referrals, and the kids don't have to go to that person that they don't know, because that is massively intimidating to go to an individual you don't know. And I think we also need to start educating parents. We're all too old. Social media is not our thing. It is for kids. They get into all types of trouble in social media, from eating disorders and groups that support eating disorders and brag about how low they can eat. And all these things are polluting our kids. And we need to make sure that we understand and that we're watching our kids, from parents to teachers to staff, so that we understand they have hurdles that we never faced when we were young.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to our next question. And this question, we're going to start with Kara. Kara, you'll have the first answer to this question. I want to move to the CARES Act funding. So Texas has not provided additional funding to public schools, though they have received $17.9 billion in funding from the various stimulus packages, specifically for education. The state legislature is holding the funds to determine whether and how to release funds. Right now, they could release $5.5 billion for education. Tell us whether you think the money should be released, and how would LTISD immediately use these relief funds?
Again, I'm for the students. I think they should release funds, and I think that it should be invested into our children. Our children are coming off of a horrible year. They lost a lot. I think that the school and the district did the best they can. This was unprecedented, but I have my kids going to school and they're watching YouTube at school, and things aren't, there's a lot of concerns. I'm okay with it. We're all in the same boat. We did the best that we could, and I think we did a really good job. Is there always room for improvement? Yes, but if they're, withholding funds, we need to put those into our children. We need to invest into our children. We need to pour into our children, especially after the year that we just had. And I think, there's many ways to use the money, but it needs, absolutely 100%, it needs to go to our children first, our children's best interests first. And I believe that we get to do that by using and referencing the Texas Education Code. I'll reference it again, 26.001. Parents are partners with educators, administrators, and school district boards of trustees in their children's education. Let's all get together, let's all get our voices heard, and let's start working in the best interest of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to Philip next. Oh, Philip, you're muted.
Thank you. The opportunity that presents in front of us with this money that's earmarked for education that's currently being held should be released. First and foremost, if it's earmarked for education, it should go back into the schools. A number of us have talked about the different things and challenges that the school district faces that's going to require some type of financial backing. We just answered a question regarding mental health and the need for additional counselors. That money is important for us to get into our system so that we can hire those counselors and folks that can help our kids, because believe it or not, our kids took a step back or a step sideways in many instances because of COVID. There are a lot of things that we need to be able to address, and that requires some type of financial means. So for the educators, those lobbying bodies that are for education, they should be there demanding release of those funds so that we can take advantage of those funds to help our children. One of the things that's unique about the position that we're in now is the government has already said that we will need some help and we're there to support you. However, with that money just sitting in a bank account and not being released for education, that is a detriment to our children and our district, and we need to lobby to get that money out. The things that I think would be important is to pour it back into our schools and our students, our teachers, and our staff to prepare them and to get them out of this lull that we have all kind of slipped into due to COVID. And that's one thing that money is earmarked for, and we need to access it as soon as possible so that we can move on to getting and learning in our best possible way for the teachers, for the students, and for the staff. And that way we can get back on the path of learning and become the best version of ourselves. Without that support, we will struggle, and it's not necessary. So release that money now.
Thank you. Tom?
I think this is a great question because the state held money so they could try to make sure that everyone had access to online learning. So Mike Marath and the state, I think, provided every district with free years of Schoology. So they were trying to operate in everyone's best interest in this. I think the remaining money definitely needs to be released back to the local communities so that the communities can sort of decide how to spend that money. We already had Schoology, so that wasn't something that really helped us out here. So if we get that money back, then we can decide how we need to use it. And it does need to do with COVID. So I think you're looking at trying to get kids back up. The state has recently said that they believe our kids are 6 months behind. So we could potentially use that money to help lower the ratio of students to teachers so that you get more intense learning in those lower, smaller classrooms so that kids can then hopefully make up some of that lost area. If we still have money after that, then it would definitely go to more counselors so the kids would have people to talk to about what they went through. Because I think we're going to have long-term effects from COVID, and we need to take it very seriously and try to use that money to tackle them up front instead of waiting.
Thank you. Lauren?
This money being released by the state will make the difference and determine what kind of recovery our children have from COVID as a state. And locally, it's going to be the difference between asking our teachers one more time to do more with the same money and the same funding for programs and supplemental instruction and additional counseling, or having the money to significantly add to what we can provide for students in need. And we know the students are in need, and they're going to come with a range of academic and social emotional needs that this money is short-term funding we could use and put to work immediately in planning for next fall. The school district, we had a discussion about this at the last board meeting, and we have, there is a district plan on how we could use this money. And I'm glad to hear so much consensus on this issue. And I would just take a moment to ask anybody who agrees to go ahead and contact our legislators and governor and ask that they release this money, because the Texas students deserve nothing less.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to go to our next question. For this one, we're going to be starting with Phil. So Phil, you're up first. How do you think the district can better serve special education children here? And I want you to give a couple specific examples.
Okay. One way I think the district can better meet the needs of special education students is we have to commit to meeting every student, including especially our special education students, where they are. And what I mean by that is we have to understand the very specific and individual needs of each student that is in our special education program so that we can maximize the amount of help that we're able to provide for them. One way to specifically do this is looking at the approach that teachers will take in terms of meeting with the students, assessing the students, listening to the parents, partnering with the parents, and any medical provider that might be involved in the child's development, and understanding exactly where that child is so that they can put together a comprehensive plan to move that child forward and provide them the maximum benefit of all of the services that the district provides. So I do believe we have to meet our children where they are. We have to partner with the families, the teachers, and any medical professionals that are involved with that child's development to ensure that child can take advantage of every possible benefit. Another thing that I think that is extremely important for this is that we have to understand that the special education process for many families can be frustrating because of all of the different things that they have to go through. We have to find a way to simplify that process so that we can get understanding of what the exact needs are and be able to move forward instead of waiting for approval of some sort to take advantage or take action for a particular child and family. So that red tape that's associated with going through the different checklists, I think needs to be reduced so that we can maximize focusing on the child and that individual's development.
Thank you so much. And then we got Todd next.
I love the special ed teachers. I think it's a very, very special person that can do that job. My sister actually started her career as a life skills teacher, so I'm very well aware of the difficulties of those classrooms. The easiest way you can do to provide support for those teachers is make sure they have teaching assistants in those rooms so that they're not left on an island, so that they actually have somebody there who is actually there to support them. So that you have help with your students, you have help throughout the day. It's not you trying to reach out to other people, trying to call down to the main office, but it's somebody right there in your classroom that can help. I also think it's really important for us to open up our budget and provide them with the technology they need. I know a lot of times those teachers ask for technology and they don't get it. So this is one of those instances where they might be the teachers that get laptops, they might get iPads, they might get whatever they need, because those kids develop differently. And so we need to make sure that we focus on providing them everything that we can. So I think we have to listen to what the teachers want. They are full of innovative ideas, but we also have to, when they come to us asking for help, we have to be willing to give them the stuff they need. Because I know a lot of times they run into roadblocks from the administration and just from the district level at large, where that they don't get the resources they request. And I think that way you would actually get better education down to the students. You probably have better communication with those teachers as well. So you might be able to prevent as much turnover, because most of the ones that I knew who worked in special ed, it was the passion. So they loved working with those students. They thoroughly enjoyed working with those students. And we need to make sure that they feel honored by us, especially as a school board. We need to recognize those teachers who devote their lives to people that are often forgotten in our society, and that we support them and we build them up. And I think that's how you'll get it to where the students also receive a whole lot of education.
Thank you, Todd. Lauren?
The last estimate I heard, I believe it was pre-COVID, we had had a 3% growth in our overall student population and 30% growth in our special education population. This is a really important issue. And some of the specific things that have come up in feedback from parents are we have had high turnover of aides in the special education department. And I know how difficult that is, especially for some of our students who take time to build relationships with the adults that work closely with them every day. And I think that continuing to focus on increasing pay for those difficult positions and also ensuring that we're providing the special education teachers and aides with the supports that they need is really important. And I think as a former special education teacher, I would also, and maybe I can do this briefly now, but for the community to understand how much special education has changed. And people remember what they saw or what they knew when they were in high school or way back when, but special education is an entire range of services. It's not a place. And a lot of children receive services or supports and excel in many areas of school. So it's different than it was 10, 20, 50 years ago. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Kara, we'll wrap up with you. You'll just need to unmute, Kara.
Hi, thank you. Yes, special education, we need to really look at that. My old neighbor was a special education teacher at Lake Travis Middle School, and he would share with me the obstacles that they had pre-pandemic. So during the pandemic, I know it's been heightened and a lot of those children are being left behind, but our teachers are stressed. Our staff is overworked right now. We are struggling and we need to, hopefully with the release of funds, we will have the funds to fill in the gaps, but our students are struggling and our special education students are struggling even more. I've had stories of parents telling me that they can't even get their children evaluated. It took 2 years to get their child evaluated because of the pandemic. So I think that we were behind before the pandemic, and now I think we're much more behind after the pandemic. And I think we need to put our heads together, parents, educators, and administrators. How can we fix this? How can we help our children? I came to Texas from California for conservative values, but I'm so happy to be here, and we picked Lake Travis because it's an amazing school district. But I do see room for growth in our special education department to serve those children who need it. There is studies after studies that say when we intervene at an earlier age, there's better outcomes. These children need attention and they need it now. Children with speech issues, my child was in speech therapy for 6 years. They need to be able to see how the mouth is moving. And masks, they cannot see that. And if there's a teacher that is concerned, by all means, we need to respect and support that teacher because she's struggling or he's struggling too. But can we contract out? I do know that there's speech therapists in our area that are seeing students in person. Can we contract out? And the Texas Education Code says that we have that ability to contract out. So if we can't serve our students the way they deserve to be served, let's contract out for these children and bring in speech therapists that are comfortable taking off their masks and working with our children now that the mandate has been lifted. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to move to our next question, and this one's going to start with Todd. One thing that most parents can agree on is that we want our kids to be ready for the real world and their careers once they leave school. And with the workforce rapidly changing in terms of cultural demographics and social competencies, we know that global perspectives are really crucial. How will Lake Travis ISD set up our children for success in understanding the value of diversity, being culturally competent and inclusive? And should culturally responsive teaching be utilized at LTISD? And how will the board focus efforts on equity and inclusion in our district?
I think the main thing here is we've got to make sure that we teach our kids to treat others with respect. I think we can do that through open dialogue. I think that we need our students to lead a lot of any of these initiatives. I think students have a very powerful voice, and when they talk to each other, that they really listen to their peers. So anytime you have anything come up, I think it's going to be mainly driven by your peers. And I think the teachers are there to listen to all students. So you listen to everybody, you listen to their concerns, and you make sure that they feel comfortable coming into your room and having these discussions with you. I also think it's important that we make these students understand that there is a whole lot beyond high school as well. So I think culturally, one of the big things that we're facing is we need to make sure that our students have an opportunity to learn different languages, to learn foreign languages, and that includes all the different ones. So I think for a while we had somebody teaching Chinese, and I think that would be a great way to introduce kids to different cultures, because the way we bridge gaps between cultures is we all come together and we discuss those things. And we see how wonderful different cultures are and what they contribute to our society at large. That's one of the beautiful things about America, is that you have this sort of melting pot mentality, where that everyone comes together and we borrow from each other's cultures, and we actually respect each other's cultures. That's something that has been beautiful to watch as I've gotten older, to see these kids come together in ways that wouldn't have happened when I was younger. So I think the younger generation, a lot of these things aren't as relevant to them, aren't as important to them as they are to maybe the adults in the room. So I think this is one of those conversations that we let students sort of lead, and we let them listen, and we actually listen to them. And I think it's always important for any educator out there to listen to all the voices in the classroom.
Thank you, Todd. We'll go to Lauren next.
Hi, I was grateful that one of the first things our new superintendent did was convene a diversity committee. And I think it's important to get that kind of feedback from the community, and to have people in the community, parents, teachers, work together to share information and figure out where we are and work that needs to be done. And I think one important piece of this discussion is that a high quality public education that truly best serves every child, where every child feels safe and welcomed, and we help every child reach their full potential. That kind of public education experience is not like pie. More for some doesn't mean less for others. When we're doing our best, it's like a rising tide that raises all ships. And I think it's important that we make sure we are reaching every student and providing the best possible opportunities.
Thank you, Lauren. We'll go to Kara next. Kara, unmute again. There you go.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's very important that we look at the issue at hand and what's currently going on. I would love to see the numbers. How many children are feeling not included? Is this because of things that are being said, things that are being done, because there's not enough room on a team, or what's going on? I want to see the whole picture, and I want to know who is on this diversity committee. What are they seeing? How are they asked to be on this committee? I don't know who's on it. I've asked that question, but it hasn't been I haven't been responded to. But if we have a racism problem, we're all, at fault. Like, we need to sit down together and see. I had a teacher tell me that at Rough Hollow Elementary, they were all handed How Not to Be a Racist book. If we are having racism issues with our teachers, like, that needs to be loud and clear. We need to hear that. Who are these teachers? Do we have racist teachers? If we do, they need to be gone, because our children deserve to be educated in truth and in love. And if they don't feel comfortable, A child can't learn in an environment where they don't feel comfortable. That's horrific. I couldn't imagine. That makes me want to cry. It's not acceptable. We need to work together with our administrators, with our teachers, with our parents, and our students, and we need to hear each other's voices, and we need to see what is truly going on. If we don't have transparency, we cannot help our children. I believe we need full transparency on this issue. Let's shine the light. What's the problem? What's truly going on? What can we do to help our children? And I think we're going to have some more discussions on that. I'm very hopeful. And I think together we can work to end this, because if there's one child that doesn't feel included, then that's all of our children. This is our community. These children deserve to be loved and educated. This is the public school system, and we all have to work together to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Philip.
I'm proud to say that I'm one of the many members who serve on the district's Diversity and Awareness Committee. And the work that we've just started will be something that I think will be extremely beneficial for our district. But I do want to make sure that when we're talking about diversity and cultural differences, one thing that always comes to mind is we have a tendency to focus on race and color of skin. And actually, we're talking about a diversity on multitudes of levels. And that diversity, there's value in that diversity because it helps us see other perspectives differently. It helps us gain an appreciation for everyone's value and what each individual, whether they are a teacher or an engineer or a scientist or a doctor or a counselor or a principal, can bring to the table. And I think that's something that we need to make sure that our students are well aware of, is that diversity is a good thing. And we need to appreciate those differences in one another so that we can learn and grow as a society. As Lauren White said, when we all do better, the tide has a tendency to raise everyone's outlook. And I believe that is very true with our children. One of the things that I would say from a cultural standpoint is we live in a very, very nice area of Texas. And one of the things that I always tell my students in the college classroom is that we need to get outside of Texas to experience something outside of Texas, because the world, the United States, Europe, other places, other countries around the world are very different from our norms. And that would be beneficial. And I think that needs to find its way into our curriculum so that we can have an appreciation to be a more active and participant in the global citizenship that we want our students to have, so that they are prepared for those next steps in life, whether that's college or trade school or gap year. We need to be prepared by helping them understand that diversity.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to turn to our next question. And for this one, Lauren, you are going to be starting us off. And this came to us from a teacher. Are you willing to examine the inequalities of cost outlays for the various sports programs and coach to player ratios in comparison to cost outlays for academics and fine arts and student to teacher ratios?
Absolutely. I think that's definitely an important thing to look at. And I'm thinking through the way we evaluate our budget now. And I know there are differences in various stipends, for example, and also the amount of revenue that programs bring into the school district. So I would say, yes, I think that's something that I would like us to look at. And we have a budget meeting upcoming next month. So I think that's a good opportunity for me to be able to ask that question so that we can make sure we're valuing every child and all different kinds of experiences.
Kara, you're up next.
Hi there, thank you. Yes, I think this is a fabulous question. I'm so glad a teacher brought this up. Our teachers, according to the last update, aren't even paid the Texas state average, yet our superintendent, his contract is $325,000 a year base salary for having 11,000 students. And one of our neighboring districts has 40,000 students in Leander, and that superintendent is paid $170,000. So I would love to know why the board would be investing more in our superintendent than in our teachers. What is he bringing to the table? I understand that he has to go back to continuous education. Are we paying him to go back to his continuous education as well? This difference in salary compared to the other superintendents in Texas, which I believe that Texas State superintendent salary is around $170,000, give and take. Ours is being paid $325,000 for having a quarter of the students. Why the discrepancy? What is the board doing to help me understand this? Because I don't understand it. I've asked these questions and I've not been getting responses to. Obviously, the man that they hired, they have faith in and believe he's the best man for the job. And I'm very excited that they have faith in that. But I want to see full transparency on where our money is going. This is our district. We, the people, are paying these salaries. And I personally would rather overpay my teachers than overpay my superintendent. So I applaud that teacher for speaking up, and I hope we look at this collectively and we do start paying our teachers more so that they are supported and we make it a win for our students. Thank you.
And Carrie, just to follow up really quick, would you be examining the inequalities of the cost outlays for the sports programs versus the fine arts, which was the question, just quickly in a couple seconds?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the elephant in the room, our football coach's salary, I hear it's huge. I haven't, invested time to research that, but he also brings, we're known. Lake Travis, my kids were thrilled to come here because of the name and the recognition that football program gets. He's done an amazing job, absolutely amazing. I also think that the fine arts program has done an amazing job. I have a kid in each. I want to support both of them. I want both of them to feel supported. I want my money to go to both programs. And so I think, again, it's full transparency on the side of the administration to show us where the funding's going.
All right, thank you so much. Go ahead, Philip.
I think this is a very important question, and I appreciate the teacher asking it. It's something that we should absolutely look at, simply because we do have sports that we invest in. We also have a number of fine arts and performing arts programs that also deserve equal and equitable contributions from a financial standpoint. Being a parent of kids that are both in the performing and fine arts and in the football and more traditional sports athletics, I want all kids to have the same opportunity and an equitable chance of getting the absolute best that they can get from our school district, whether they are in the band, whether they are on color guard, whether they are a cavalette, whether they're a football player or baseball player or any extracurricular activity. I would definitely be up for taking a closer look at those financials to understand where that money is being allocated. I do want to make sure that the students feel supported in everything that they are wanting to pursue. And I can tell you firsthand that as a Cavalette dad, we have a strong support. We have strong backing. I've talked to students in the fine arts where they have access to equipment, lights, recording apparatuses that are not even available at some colleges that we have here in Lake Travis. And I want to make sure that continues for all of our fine arts. And I do think it needs to be equitable and fair across the board. Thank you.
Todd?
I think we definitely need to look at how we spend our money on arts. The arts are something that are always very important. I think it's one of those things that we tend to forget, that a lot of kids actually come to school just to go to art class, to go to that film class, to go to those fine arts things that sort of drive their spirit and make them feel like they're valued in that campus. And they're valued in a different way. So you have the sports that are very vocal and everyone gets to see them. And then you have the behind the scene kids who get the camera work and record those those broadcasts for the football team. And we need to support those kids as well. And we need to make sure that the administration is willing to pay for those kids to go to away games, and that they're willing to support those kids in any way that they need that support. So it's not just a ratio of how many staff is there, it's how much we spend on the fine arts, and that we make sure that we actually get high quality teachers in here, and we don't discourage them, because I know some in the past have actually left because they were discouraged by the support they got. So we need to make sure our teachers feel like we have their backs and that they're valuable and what they're doing is valuable, because those kids need those teachers. They need that outlet so that they feel like LT is a place for them and not just a place for athletics. So I definitely look at trying to get a ratio that was better for the fine arts and didn't just have one-sided support with athletics.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have time for one last question. Let's just do 1 minute on this so we make sure we get out of here on time and start our next section. But I just want to, first of all, I want to thank you all for being here with us tonight. I really appreciate you. And I know our community appreciates your transparency and candor in this forum. So my last question for you, and I believe that we are on Philip to start this question. So we're going to start with Philip. I would like to hear from you as Lake Travis changes demographically, culturally, demographically. How do you plan to make students feel welcome in a changing cultural demographic area? And on top of that, does having a diverse student body matter to you? And how so?
It does matter to me. Having a diverse student body is very important because it needs to illustrate and highlight those differences that I talked about from student to student. And I think that's extremely important for us as a district to welcome that diversity and find a way to make sure that they feel included. And I know part of what the work we're doing on the diversity and awareness committee is that there are some groups that do feel left out, and we have to find a way to reach out and pull them back in and help them understand that this is their LT2. And we need to make sure that they feel welcome in our district and that they feel like they have the best possible opportunity to be successful in our district. And I think that's very important for all of us, because as we understand and respect the differences amongst one another, we all become better global citizens, and our kids will be better prepared to go out into a world that's going to be very different than what we see here at Lake Travis.
Thank you so much. Todd?
I think the biggest thing is I grew up in Department of Defense schools that were massively diverse. I grew up, I spent some time in Germany. You had kids that spoke German there. And I think this is the wonderful thing about kids. Kids are welcoming. Kids will bring anyone in. I went to a high school that had one of the largest Tonga populations in America, and they were great guys. I liked a lot of them. They were my friends. I had friends who were Asian. So when you're in a school that has a diverse group, it's about finding those common interests, those common things that bring us all together, that sort of bridge that divide. And so that's why it's important and I think this goes to even having this massive high school we have. Kids get lost in this place. It's very easy to get lost. It's very easy to not participate in clubs. It's very easy to sort of sit in the back of the room and feel left out. And it's more about making sure that kids recognize that and they engage with those students, because I don't think any of the kids would like that if they knew they felt like somebody's being left out on their part. So I think kids will naturally gravitate to welcoming people. I think that's what we need to rely on, get those kids engaged and get them out there so that they can lead the way.
Thank you so much. Lauren?
Thanks. Yeah, I think our differences make us stronger. And as our community grows, I think it's important that we make sure our teachers and staff feel well prepared and equipped to welcome whoever comes. I think that's one of the most incredible things about public education is that we take you as you are, and it's not our place to judge. It's our place to welcome you and to make sure you're safe and to educate you. And I hope that can continue as the district grows.
Thank you so much. Kara, coming to you. Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Okay. Hi there. Yes, I absolutely think it's very important that we have a diverse group and it's represented at LTISD. I think that every child, regardless of where they come from or what they look like, needs to feel in community. That's where we grow. We are people of community. And I think it's amazing. I fully agree with what Todd Taylor said. I think children are welcoming. They are. Children are kind. They're loving. And I think we are the ones, the adults, that sometimes cause the divide or mess that up when we fail to see what's going on. And if we could offer more programs that we have students that can find their people, you know, we need to sing their song, not just the song that we like. And I think by having groups or programs or festivals or something where kids can shine in the way they feel great and comfortable and loved, they're going to excel. They're going to learn better. They're going to feel better. And I think we all need to do a job and really look into and see how we can help them do that, make them feel more comfortable and included. So yes, for sure.
Thank you so much. And again, I really appreciate you all for being here. And voters, keep in mind that the candidates that are running for the seat against each other are Lauren White and Cara Bell, and then Todd Taylor, Philip Davis, and Spike McBride are running in a separate election. So you have 2 votes for 2 separate board seats. And keep in mind that early voting starts on April 19th. And the election day is May 1st. Again, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate your time and energy. And again, cheers to you for running. I know it's a really difficult endeavor. We are going to be coming to you right after this with Bee Cave City Council. So just give us 1 minute to get everybody up and running, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.